Welcome back, everyone, to Season 9 of the Deep Dive.
Yeah.
This season, we're doing something pretty different, something I'm really excited about. We're going to be exploring the world of the Syriac early church fathers.
This is going to be cool.
Yeah, these are hugely influential figures who really shaped a lot of early Christian theology, biblical interpretation, and even some of those early ascetic practices.
Oh, yeah. They had a big impact on everything that came later.
Definitely. So today's deep dive, we're going to be focusing on the work of one of these really fascinating figures, John of Ephesus.
John of Ephesus. Great pick.
Yeah, lived approximately 507 to 586 CE.
Wow. So right in the heart of that really dynamic period.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to unpack his life and writings to try to get a sense of the crucial insights that he offers into this really pivotal period of both church and Byzantine history.
Byzantine history is so fascinating.
Oh, it's a treasure trove of intrigue and power struggles and theological debates. It's just, talk about a deep dive, right?
Right. It's all right there.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we jump in, I do want to acknowledge and thank the person whose research made this episode possible.
Oh, yes, definitely.
This deep dive is all thanks to Andre Mubarak, who is a teacher and tour guide based in Jerusalem. Yeah, he's an Aramaic-speaking Christian living in Jerusalem, and he really dedicates his work to this uncovering of the Aramaic roots of our Christian faith.
That's so important. I think a lot of people don't realize how much Aramaic influences there are in early Christianity.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. And if you're interested in learning more about this whole area of study, please do check out his website. It's www.twinsbiblicalacademy.com. It's really good stuff. Okay, so for today's session, you've shared all this material about John of Ephesus. And our mission, as always, is to try to extract those most compelling nuggets from the information you provided, give our listeners a really clear understanding of his significance without, totally overwhelming them.
Right. Find those golden nuggets.
Exactly. Yeah. So let's unpack this. Who exactly was this John of Ephesus, and what was the world that he lived in?
All right. So John of Ephesus, he was born around 507 CE in Amida, which is modern-day Diyarbakir in Turkey.
Okay.
Early in his life, he became a monk at the monastery of Marşan Ertoyo, which is close to where he was born. And his life kind of unfolded throughout the 6th century.
6th century? That's...
Yeah, a big one.
A big one.
To really understand John, you have to picture the Byzantine Empire in the 6th century. I mean, this was a major power player on the world stage at the time.
Huge, yeah.
But it was also a time of some pretty intense religious debates, especially in the wake of the Council of Chalcedon, which had happened just a few decades before.
Yeah, we talked about that a bit in previous seasons.
Yeah, imperial politics were also incredibly dynamic. You had different emperors coming to power with really different views and approaches to religious minorities within the empire.
I mean, it sounds like a really fascinating but also pretty volatile time to be alive.
Oh, absolutely. You never knew what was going to happen next.
So into this world steps John of Ephesus, and he eventually becomes a bishop, right?
Yes, that's right. Later in his life, he was appointed as a Miaphysite bishop of Ephesus.
A Miaphysite bishop. Okay, so for our listeners who might not be as familiar with this term, can you quickly explain what that means?
Of course. So Miaphysites, they held a particular theological view of Christ. They believed that he had one unified nature, both divine and human, completely intertwined, inseparable.
Okay, so both fully God and fully human, but kind of like woven together into one single nature.
Exactly. And this is where things get really interesting because the officially sanctioned theology of the Byzantine Empire, what we often call the Chalcedonian view, held that Christ had two distinct natures, one divine and one human.
Oh, so this is like a fundamental difference in how they understood the very nature of Jesus.
Oh, absolutely. This was a huge point of contention within Christianity at the time. And the fact that John was appointed a bishop by Emperor Justinian I while holding these Miaphysite beliefs, it's really significant.
It's like he's almost being endorsed by the emperor, even though his views are at odds with the official state-sanctioned theology.
It definitely raises some questions about Justinian's own beliefs and his approach to religious diversity within the empire.
I mean, it sounds like John was walking a bit of a tightrope here, potentially facing opposition or scrutiny from those who adhere to the Chalcedonian view.
Oh, absolutely. And it placed him and the broader Miaphysite communities in a really delicate position.
Yeah.
They were always navigating the favor or disfavor of the emperor, which, as we said, could change pretty dramatically depending on who was in power and their particular religious policies.
So it's this context, this world of theological debate and shifting imperial power that really shapes John of Ephesus's life and work.
It's the backdrop against which his story unfolds.
Now we know that his most significant work is his Ecclesiastical History.
A classic.
Yeah. Why is this work in particular so important for us to understand this period?
Well, his Ecclesiastical History is actually a three-part work.
Oh, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, and unfortunately, the first two parts have been mostly lost to time. Centuries of wars and just general wear and tear on manuscripts.
Makes sense.
Yeah, but we do have some fragments and quotations from those earlier parts that were preserved in later historical writings, like the Chronicle of Michael the Syrian, which is a really valuable resource.
Okay, so we haven't lost them completely.
Not entirely, no. But the really exciting thing is that the entire third part of his Ecclesiastical History has survived in its original Syriac language.
Wow, that's incredible.
It really is, and this is where it gets particularly interesting because this last part covers the years 571 to 586 CE, and it offers us a first-hand account from someone who was actually there witnessing the religious persecutions that were happening under Emperor Justin II and the ongoing wars with the Persian Empire, which were really devastating conflicts.
So we're talking about an eyewitness account from someone who held a different theological viewpoint than the official imperial line?
Exactly. It's like having access to the other side of the story, a perspective that's often missing from the official historical narratives, which were mostly written by those who adhere to the Chalcedonian understanding.
Yeah, I mean, this seems absolutely essential for anyone who's trying to get a more complete and balanced understanding of this period.
Oh, I completely agree. It gives us a whole new lens through which to view the events of the time and understand their impact.
So when we consider John's ecclesiastical history, what kind of unique insights does it offer? What can we learn from it that we wouldn't find elsewhere?
Well, for starters, as we've already mentioned, it provides that crucial Miaphysite perspective on all these church matters.
Okay.
It gives us an alternative to those dominant Chalcedonian narratives that we usually see.
So we can see how these theological debates played out from a different angle.
Right. We get to see the concerns, the interpretations, the lived experiences of those who held a different understanding of Christ's nature.
So it's not just about abstract theological arguments, it's about how those beliefs actually impacted people's lives.
Exactly. And secondly, the history really delves into the experiences of those Miaphysite communities themselves as they were facing pressure and sometimes outright persecution from the Byzantine authorities.
So we can see how these theological differences actually played out in the real world.
Absolutely. It moves beyond those abstract arguments and shows us the very real challenges that these communities faced and their resilience in the face of adversity.
So it's a much more human story.
Yeah, very much so. And thirdly, the ecclesiastical history isn't just focused on religious matters. It also contains a wealth of information about secular events that were happening at the same time, like those Byzantine-Persian wars that we mentioned, which really shaped the geopolitical landscape.
Oh, right. Huge wars.
Absolutely massive. And there were also recurring outbreaks of plague that swept through the region, which obviously had a profound impact on society.
I mean, that's something that we can relate to even today, those kinds of pandemics that just sweep through and change everything.
It really highlights the interconnectedness of history, how these events, both religious and secular, influence and shape each other.
Yeah, and it also makes his work all the more valuable as a historical source because it's not just a religious treatise, it's a record of all these different aspects of life in the 6th century.
It gives us a much broader view of the period.
Now, I understand that beyond this major historical work, John also wrote something called Lives of the Eastern Saints.
He did, and that's another really important contribution that he made.
There be more.
It's a collection of biographies, but it specifically focuses on 58 Miaphysite religious figures.
Okay.
Monks, bishops, and other key individuals within their communities.
So it's like getting a glimpse into the lives of these people who are living out their faith in this really tumultuous time.
Exactly. It's like stepping through a doorway into their world.
Yeah.
Seeing their faith in action in their daily lives.
I love that image.
It offers these really intimate glimpses into their routines, their ascetic practices, the ways they discipline themselves for spiritual growth, and the overall spiritual ethos that characterized these communities during this era.
That sounds fascinating. What kind of things do we learn about them?
Well, we learn about their struggles, their piety, the ways in which their faith shaped every aspect of their lives. We even get details about the miracles that were attributed to some of these individuals.
Oh, wow. So it's not just a dry historical account. It's also a glimpse into the spiritual world of these early Christians.
Very much so. And it helps us to understand how they navigated the challenges of their time and found strength and meaning in their faith.
So moving beyond these specific works, what would you say is John of Ephesus's overall historical significance? Why should we in the 21st century still be paying attention to this figure?
That's a great question. And I think there are several reasons why he's so important. First and foremost, as we've touched on already, he stands as a vital primary source for this period. He's one of the very few surviving Syriac writers from this specific time who was actually there witnessing and recording events as they happened.
So he's not just relying on secondhand accounts or hearsay.
No, he's giving us a first-hand perspective, which is invaluable.
And this is particularly important because the majority of the surviving historical narratives from this era are written from that Chalcedonian viewpoint, right?
Exactly. So having John's work, which presents a non-Chalcedonian perspective, helps to balance out our understanding. It prevents us from getting a potentially biased or incomplete view of the past.
It's like getting the other side of the story.
It is, and it reminds us that history is always more complex and nuanced than any single narrative can capture.
Yeah, I mean, it underscores the importance of seeking out different voices from the past to get a more holistic and accurate picture of any given period.
Absolutely. And in John's case, he's not just offering a different perspective, he's also giving a voice to the experiences of the Miaphysite community during a time when they were facing persecution and marginalization.
So we're hearing from a group that's often silenced or ignored in the dominant historical narratives.
Precisely. And through his writings, we can begin to understand how these religious minorities navigated the complex and often shifting religious policies of the Byzantine Empire. We learn about their resilience, their strategies for survival, their interpretations of the events unfolding around them.
It's like they're finally getting to tell their side of the story.
Exactly. And it enriches our understanding of the period by showing us how history impacted different groups in different ways.
And as you mentioned earlier, he wasn't just some detached observer. He was living through these major events. He was an eyewitness to history.
Absolutely. John personally witnessed and documented some truly significant events, like that devastating plague that happened during Justinian's reign, the persecutions of Miaphysites under Justin II, and the ongoing conflicts between the Byzantine and Persian empires, which were just shaping the entire region.
So his accounts have this immediacy and weight to them because he was actually there seeing it all unfold.
And it makes his work all the more compelling and insightful, because he's not just recounting facts, he's also conveying the lived experience of what it was like to be in the midst of these events.
Yeah, it really helps to bring that distant period to life in a much more vivid way.
And it reminds us that history is ultimately about people and their experiences.
Now, the material you shared also refers to John as a cultural bridge. What does that term signify in his context?
Oh, that's a really apt description, because John was in this unique position where he was operating within the structures of the Byzantine Empire. Remember, he was a bishop appointed by the emperor himself.
Right.
But at the same time, he maintained his strong Syriac Orthodox identity and his connections to the broader Syriac cultural sphere.
So he's kind of straddling these two worlds.
Exactly. And his writings and his life offer us these valuable insights into how those two distinct cultures, the Greek and the Syriac, interacted and influenced each other during this really formative period in Christian history.
So he's a bridge between these two worlds.
Yes, a bridge, a point of connection, a conduit for cultural exchange.
And that makes him even more significant because he's not just representing one perspective or one culture, he's embodying the intersection of those cultures.
And showing us how they were intertwined and interconnected.
So to really appreciate the significance of John's contributions, it's essential to remember that broader religious landscape of the 6th century, particularly the major schism that followed the Council of Chalcedon.
Absolutely. We can't understand John without understanding that context.
Right. So remind us again, what was the Council of Chalcedon and how did it lead to this schism within Christianity?
Well, the Council of Chalcedon took place in 451 CE, and it was a major turning point in the history of the church.
Okay.
The primary issue that they were grappling with was the nature of Christ. You know, how to understand the fact that he was both divine and human.
Yeah, that's a question that's been debated for centuries.
Absolutely. And at the Council of Chalcedon, they ultimately decided that the best way to understand this was to affirm that Christ had two distinct natures, one divine and one human, united in one person. But not everyone agreed with this definition, and that's where the schism comes in.
So some people felt that this two-nature doctrine wasn't an accurate or complete understanding of Christ's nature.
Exactly. And among those who disagreed were the Miaphysites, who, as we've discussed, believed in one unified nature of Christ, both divine and human, fully present but inseparable.
Okay, so the Council of Chalcedon really created this dividing line within Christianity.
It did, and the Miaphysites were particularly strong in regions like Egypt, Syria, and Armenia, and over the subsequent centuries, Byzantine emperors adopted a range of different approaches to these communities, sometimes trying to reconcile with them, sometimes persecuting them.
And John of Ephesus's writings really document those shifting imperial policies and their impact on the ground.
They gave us a first-hand account of what it was like to live through those times of both reconciliation and persecution.
So in a sense, John becomes this representative figure for the Miaphysite community and their experience within the Byzantine Empire.
Absolutely, he embodies their struggles, their resilience, their unique theological perspective.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what would you say is John of Ephesus's enduring legacy? What lasting impact did he have on history?
His works remain absolutely invaluable for historians who study late antiquity, the Byzantine Empire, Syriac Christianity, and the broader history of the Middle East.
He's given us this window into a world that we wouldn't otherwise have access to.
Exactly. His perspective is unique and crucial because he was a member of a religious minority who was also connected to the inner workings of the imperial circles. He offers us insights into the complexities of Byzantine society that we wouldn't find elsewhere.
And what's particularly interesting is that he's not just a detached chronicler of events.
Right.
He's a historian with a clear point of view, a passion for his own community and their well-being.
And that passion shines through in his writing. It gives his work a sense of urgency and immediacy.
So he's not just presenting facts, he's also conveying a perspective, a lived experience.
And that's what makes him so compelling as a historical figure.
And yet, despite his significance, he's often been overlooked in more traditional historical accounts, especially when compared to his Greek contemporaries who were writing during the same period.
Unfortunately, that's true, and it highlights a historical trend of marginalizing Syriac sources, something that modern scholarship is actively working to correct.
So it's important for us to acknowledge and appreciate the contributions of figures like John of Ephesus, who offer us these alternative perspectives on history.
Absolutely. They challenge our assumptions. They enrich our understanding.
Yeah.
They help us to see the past in a new light.
And ultimately, that's what history is all about, right?
It is. It's about constantly reevaluating and reinterpreting the past in light of new evidence and new perspectives.
Well said. So what does this all mean for us today? Why should we care about this figure from so long ago?
It means that John of Ephesus provides us with a crucial and often unheard perspective on a pivotal era in Christian history.
Okay.
Or a perspective that challenges and deepens our understanding of this transformative period.
It's a reminder that there are always multiple sides to every story, and that we need to be open to hearing those different perspectives.
Especially from those who have been marginalized or silenced throughout history.
Yeah. John of Ephesus gives voice to those who are often overlooked, and his story reminds us of the importance of seeking out and amplifying those voices.
So that we can get a more complete and accurate understanding of the past.
Well, I think that's a great note to end on. So thank you so much for taking us on this deep dive into the life and work of John of Ephesus.
It's been a pleasure.
It's been fascinating. And as always, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to share this knowledge with our listeners.
And let's not forget the person who made all this possible.
Oh, yes, definitely.
Huge thanks to Andrei Mubarak for his incredible research.
Absolutely. His dedication to uncovering the Aramaic roots of Christianity has really opened up a whole new world for us. And for anyone who wants to delve deeper into this fascinating area of study, please do visit his website, which is www.twinsbiblicacademy.com.
It's a treasure trove of information.
Okay, so that wraps up our deep dive into the life and legacy of John of Ephesus. But this exploration into the world of the Syriac early church fathers has only just begun.
Oh, there's so much more to uncover.
Yeah, we've only just scratched the surface, and we can't wait to share more of these fascinating stories with you in the coming weeks.
Buckle up, everyone.
Yeah, it's going to be a great season. So until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep into the rich and complex history of our faith.